Captain Vorex of the Concordium scout vessel Distant Whisper stared at the holographic display with all four of his eyes. His dense chestnut fur rippled with tension as the scan results confirmed what should have been impossible. The sensory ridge along his spine prickled, an ancient warning signal from his species' evolutionary past. "Run the analysis again," he ordered, his voice a low rumble that betrayed his agitation despite his attempt at composure. "Analysis complete, Captain," replied Science Officer Neem, her sleek silver-gray fur catching the light as her paws moved gracefully across the ship's interface. "The results remain unchanged. The biosignatures are unmistakable. They are humans." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member froze momentarily as the implications settled in their varied mammalian anatomies. Humans, the species that the combined forces of 17 interstellar civilizations had spent centuries methodically exterminating from the universe. The species whose elimination had been declared complete in the year 9472, over 600 cycles ago. "Impossible," whispered Commander Trell, her translucent horn tips glowing faintly with agitation beneath her golden-brown fur. The purge was comprehensive. Not a single human settlement remained. And yet, Vorex gestured to the scan, his claws extended in emphasis, "here they are." In the officers' lounge, heated discussions erupted as news of the discovery spread through the ship. The Distant Whisper's crew was a microcosm of the fractured Concordium, diverse species united by military protocol but divided by historical perspectives and cultural memories. "I don't understand the fuss," said Navigator Perrin, her spotted coat bristling as she leaned across the table. "My family lost ancestors in the Battle of Salt. The humans used forbidden weapons, destroyed entire fleets. The archives also show that we struck first," countered Communications Officer Keltor, his rust-colored fur darkening as his ears flattened against his skull. "Destroyed 3 of their colonies before they even understood who we were." "That's revisionist history," snapped Engineer Vosa, her small, rounded ears twitching nervously. "The Council determined they were an existential threat based on their acceleration curve. We acted preemptively to save countless species. My great-grandsire wrote in his memoirs that the vote wasn't unanimous," said Medical Officer Soren quietly, his white-tipped tail swishing in contemplation. 3 council species voted against the purge. They were overruled. "The Canamir were among those who voted against it," added Ensign Tarak, looking meaningfully at Captain Vorex, who had just entered the lounge. The young officer's striped fur puffed up with embarrassment when he realized the captain had overheard. Vorex paused, his 4 eyes blinking in their distinctive pattern. "Outer pair first, then inner." "Yes, Ensign, my species argued for continued diplomacy. Our cultural archives still contain translations of human literature, music, even some of their art. We believed they had potential." "And now we've found survivors," whispered Security Officer Marden, his massive, scarred frame dominating their small circle. "What will you do, Captain?" All eyes turned to Vorex, whose fur rippled along his shoulders, the Canamir equivalent of a contemplative sigh. "First, we observe. We learn. Then, we decide." The planet below had no official designation in Concordium charts. It existed at the edge of what had once been human territory, now part of the disputed regions where the former allies of the Great Purge waged war against one another. The irony was not lost on Vorex. Those who had united to eliminate humanity now fought endlessly over the territories they had cleared. As the Distant Whisper entered orbit, the crew could hardly believe the detailed scans. The world below teemed with life. Not just any life, but human civilization in full bloom. Cities dotted coastlines, surrounded by orderly agricultural zones. Transportation networks crisscrossed continents. Energy signatures indicated a mid-level technological society, roughly equivalent to what humans had achieved just before their first interstellar ventures. Most surprising were the infrastructure patterns. The cities were not the sprawling metropolises of ancient human worlds, but elegant structures that blended with the natural environment. Solar collection arrays and wind harvesters provided energy, while vast agricultural domains suggested a society that had mastered sustainable food production. There were no signs of the massive industrial complexes that had once poisoned human worlds, nor the military installations that had prompted such fear among the galactic community. "They've rebuilt so much," Neem observed, her scientific detachment temporarily overcome by wonder. "But how did they survive? The historical records state that the last human stronghold fell at the Battle of Proxima Centauri." "That battle was devastating," added Keltor, his rust-colored fur darkening with emotion. "My great-granddam served as a communications specialist during the final campaigns. She would tell stories of the human resistance and their kindness even in defeat." "Kindness?" Junior Officer Mira snorted, her spotted coat bristling. "The humans were monsters. My family's records speak of their unpredictable aggression, their tendency toward violence." "That's Voth Dominion propaganda," countered Soren, his white-tipped tail swishing in agitation. "Before the war, my ancestors studied human medicine. Their capacity for empathy was unmatched among sentient species. Their healers would treat friend and foe alike." "Then why did we exterminate them?" asked Mira, her voice dropping to a whisper. Vorek's ears flattened momentarily. "Fear," he said simply. "Fear of what they might become." 3 days into their observation, the mystery deepened. The human civilization, numbering nearly 1 billion individuals, appeared to have no knowledge of the wider universe. They had no space program beyond a handful of orbital satellites. Their communications revealed no awareness of alien life, no historical records of the Great Purge, no memory of humanity's fall. "It's as if they've forgotten everything," Neem reported in the ship's conference chamber, her paws arranging holographic data streams with practiced precision. "Their historical records begin approximately 2,400 years ago with the landing of generation ships. They believe they came from a planet called Earth, but they have no records of what happened to it or why they left." Vorex contemplated the information, his long tail swishing thoughtfully behind him. "A colony ship that escaped the notice of the Purge fleets. Perhaps it was already far from human space when the war began." "Or deliberately sent away," suggested Martin, his dark fur making him a shadowy presence at the edge of the room. "A final attempt to preserve their species. But why have they not advanced further?" Trell asked, her horn tips glowing with skepticism. "Humans were known for their rapid technological progress. These humans should have developed interstellar travel centuries ago." "Perhaps they chose not to," offered Keltor. "Our intercepted communications show a society deeply focused on balance and sustainability. Maybe they rejected expansion." "Unlikely," Trell countered. "The historical profile of human psychology shows an innate drive for expansion and exploration. It was one of the traits that made them so dangerous." "With respect, Commander," Keltor said, his tail curled formally. "Before we became enemies, humans were our teachers in many ways. My ancestors' records speak of human artistic achievements that moved even the most stoic of our kind to emotional responses we hadn't known we were capable of. Their music, their stories. They had gifts beyond mere technology. The answer to their technological stagnation came from Junior Officer Krell, who had been analyzing the planet's unique properties." His small, rodent-like body straightened with excitement. "Captain, I believe I've found something. The planet's crust contains high concentrations of a rare element we classify as Deuterium-435. It emits a subtle radiation that our sensors initially missed, but which appears to have a dampening effect on certain types of technological development." "Explain," ordered Vorex. "The radiation specifically interferes with the principles necessary for faster-than-light travel and certain weapons technologies. It's possible the original colonists didn't detect it, or perhaps they chose this world specifically for this property, a place where their descendants would never develop the technologies that made other species fear them." Neem's ears perked up in excitement. "That would explain much. If the colonists were aware of this property, it suggests they deliberately sought isolation. Not just physical distance from the conflict, but a guaranteed technological limitation that would prevent them from repeating the mistakes that led to the Purge." "A self-imposed quarantine," Vorex mused, his fur smoothing as understanding dawned. engineering their own evolutionary path away from the traits that made them targets. As observation continued, the ship became increasingly divided. In the mess hall, crew members clustered by opinion rather than species or function. Those who advocated contact sat separately from those who insisted on following the ancient purge protocols. "The Concordium barely exists anymore," argued Kelter during an off-duty gathering. "The Halaxian Empire and the Voth Dominion have been at each other's throats for 2 centuries. The Corian Collective has fragmented into a dozen competing factions. Nobody remembers why we even feared the humans so much." "The archives are clear," Trell insisted from across the room, her horn tips pulsing with emotion. Humans were deemed existentially dangerous due to their unpredictability, their aggression, their rapid technological advancement, and their inability to integrate into the greater galactic community. "You've been studying those humans for days now, Commander," called Saren. "Do they match the archive's description?" Trell's fur bristled along her neck. "What we see now could be deceptive. They've clearly engineered both their environment and their society to appear harmless." "Or to become harmless," suggested Vorex, entering the mess hall in time to catch the exchange. "Our ancestors feared what humans might become. Perhaps these humans feared it too." The room fell silent, all eyes on the captain. "I've made my decision," Vorex announced. "We will make contact." The decision to make contact was not taken lightly. Vorex knew that by Concordium law, if anyone still followed it, he should report this finding and await the arrival of a purge fleet. But as he watched the humans going about their daily lives through the ship's observation systems, he saw nothing of the dangerous species described in ancient propaganda. These humans built beautiful cities, integrated with natural landscapes. Their global communication networks buzzed with art, science, and philosophy. They had achieved a stable population and sustainable use of planetary resources. Most remarkably, they had no significant armed conflicts. Their society appeared to have moved beyond warfare. "Permission to speak freely, Captain," Commander Trell requested in his ready room, her posture rigid with disapproval. "Always, Commander. This is a mistake. The directive is clear. Any human remnants must be reported immediately. The purge protocols would be reinitiated." Varex's fur bristled along his shoulders. "The Concordium that issued that directive is gone, Commander. What remains are fragments fighting over the spoils of a war most of us are too young to remember." "The principles remain valid," Trell insisted. "The humans were deemed—" "I've read the assessment," Varex interrupted, his 4 eyes fixing her with an intense gaze. "I've also read what the archives don't emphasize. The cultural exchange programs, the joint scientific ventures, the philosophical dialogues. Before the fear took hold, we were learning from each other. And then they developed weapons that could unmake stars," Trell countered. "As did we," Vorex said quietly. "The difference was, we used ours first." Trell's horn tips darkened. "You cannot rewrite history, Captain." "No," he agreed. "But perhaps we can learn from it. Look at what happened after we eliminated the humans. Did we achieve the promised peace and stability? No. We turned on each other, because the problem was never humanity. It was fear, our fear. First contact was made in a small coastal settlement far from the largest human population centers. Vorex chose to lead the delegation himself, alongside Neem and 2 security officers whose weapons remained secured on the shuttle. "I should be going with you," Commander Trell had insisted during the final briefing, her horn tips flashing with indignation. "No, Commander," Vorex had replied firmly. "Your views on humans are too established. We need open minds for this encounter." Now, as the landing party prepared to disembark, Keltor— "The crew is talking. Some say you're betraying the Concordium, others that you're a visionary." The communications officer's rust-colored fur rippled with tension. "Whatever happens down there, I want you to know I believe we're doing the right thing." Vorex clasped Kelter's shoulder with a clawed hand. Thank you, my friend. Keep the ship safe while we're planetside, and if anything goes wrong, we'll be monitoring continuously, Kelter assured him, though I doubt these humans are the type to harm alien visitors. The landing site was a stretch of beach beside a settlement that seemed to grow from the surrounding forest, rather than imposing itself upon the land. The buildings were constructed of native stone and biologically grown composites, their forms flowing organically into terraced gardens and public spaces. As the shuttle's hatch opened, Vorex felt the planet's atmosphere wash over him, warm, humid, rich with the scent of plant life and the tang of ocean salt. It reminded him of his own homeworld long before industrialization had altered its climate patterns. A small crowd of humans had gathered at a respectful distance. The security team tensed, ready for hostility, but instead the humans simply waited, their expressions a mixture of awe, curiosity, and surprisingly, an almost serene expectation. "They're so small," whispered Neem, her silver-gray fur catching the sunlight. "The archives always made them sound larger." It was not their size that frightened the Council, Vorex reminded her. It was their potential. The humans' reaction to the arrival of aliens was not what any of the crew expected. There was initial shock, certainly, gasps and wide eyes, and a few people running away to spread the news, but no panic, no aggression, no immediate attempt to attack the unknown. Instead, a woman stepped forward. She was old by human standards, her hair white, her face lined with what Vorex had learned to recognize as the markings of age. She wore simple garments of woven fabric, dyed in earthy colors, and around her neck hung a small pendant that caught the sunlight. "We've been waiting for you," she said simply. Vorex's translator needed a moment to process the language, which had evolved from standard human English. "You expected us?" The woman smiled. "Not specifically you, but we knew someone would come eventually. It's in our oldest stories that we came from the stars, and that one day the stars would come to us." She placed her hand on her chest. "I am Ruth Creed, elder historian of Haven Settlement." She looked at each member of the alien delegation, showing no fear of their exotic physiologies. Vorex, canine-like features with his 4 eyes and mane, Neen's feline ancestry with her silver fur, the armored security officers with their stocky ursine builds. "You are the first visitors from beyond our world in our recorded history," Ruth continued. "Yet you do not seem surprised to find humans here." Vorex hesitated, his ears flicking forward, then back in uncertainty. "We are familiar with your species, though we believe none remained." Ruth nodded, as if confirming something she already knew. "The stories say that humanity faced a great challenge among the stars. Our ancestors chose a different path." She gestured toward a building behind her. "Come, there's something you should see." In a climate-controlled room beneath the settlement's central archive, Ruth Creed showed them artifacts preserved from the original colony ships. The chamber was lined with display cases containing physical objects, books bound in actual paper, tools, clothing, and personal effects of the first colonists. At the center stood a remarkably well-preserved data core, still functional after millennia. "Our ancestors left detailed records," she explained, activating holographic displays with a series of gestures. Ancient images sprang to life. Starships, space stations, battles among the stars. They knew what was happening in human space. The wars with alien civilizations, the falling colonies, the retreat from the outer systems. Vorex gasped as one image appeared, a human and one of his own species, their hands clasped in what his kind called the bond of trust. "You recognize this?" Ruth asked, noticing his reaction. "That's a Kenamir," Vorex said softly, his fur rippling with emotion. "My species. This must be from before." "Before the Alliance fractured?" Ruth completed his thought. "Yes. Our records indicate there were 17 major sapient species in the Concordium. The Kenamir were among humanity's earliest and closest allies." Neem's whiskers twitched in surprise. "You know about the Concordium?" "We know that humanity faced extinction," Ruth said calmly. Our founders were scientists, philosophers, and pacifists who believed that the path humanity had taken led inevitably to conflict. The hologram shifted to show star charts and planetary surveys. They spent decades searching for a world that would suit their purpose, not just a habitable planet, but one with specific property. You knew about the Deuterium 435? Vorex realized. Ruth nodded. We call it Pacifium in our language. Our founders discovered this world with its unique radiation that would prevent the development of the very technologies that had brought so much suffering. They knew it would limit our growth, confine us to this single world perhaps forever. That was not a price but their purpose. She guided them to another section where preserved genetic samples and medical equipment were displayed. They even modified themselves slightly, nothing that would make us non-human, but subtle changes to temper certain aggressive instincts, enhance cooperative tendencies, strengthen our connection to our environment. You engineered yourselves? Martin asked, unable to hide his alarm, his dark fur standing on end. Not as weapons or tools, Ruth clarified, but as stewards, better suited to the responsibilities we would bear. Each generation chooses whether to continue these modifications. For 24 centuries, we have chosen to remain on this path. She activated another display, showing the faces of the original colonists. Diverse humans, weary but determined. They made a choice to start anew, to build a society based on different principles, and they left us with a message for the day when the stars would return to us. The hologram shifted and a man in antiquated clothing appeared. The image was old but remarkably crisp, a bearded man with kind eyes that seemed to look directly at the visitors from across millennia. To those who find us, the recording began, if you come in peace, we welcome you as friends. If you come in war, we offer no resistance. We have chosen a different path for humanity, not expansion, not dominance, but harmony. We do not fear extinction, for we have already witnessed the death of one version of humanity. What we have built here is something new, something we hope is worthy of survival. Judge us, not by what humans were, but by what we have become. The man's image was joined by others, hundreds of the first colonists, standing together in what appeared to be the cargo bay of a massive generation ship. We regret that we were unable to save more, the recording continued. As the last survivors prepared this ark, others fought to buy us time. They knew they would not escape. Their sacrifice allowed us this chance to preserve not just human life, but the best of human potential. Vorex noticed that Mardon's typically impassive features had softened, his scarred muzzle revealing a complex mixture of emotions. If those who drove us to extinction still exist, tell them this: we forgive you. Fear makes enemies of those who should be friends. We hope that time has brought wisdom and that our descendants will find a universe ready to embrace diversity rather than fear it. As the recording ended, a profound silence filled the chamber. Finally, it was Martin who spoke, his gruff voice unusually gentle. My ancestors were among the assault forces at the Battle of Sol, he said. Our pack histories tell of the day the human homeworld fell. We were told it was a great victory, necessary for the survival of all. Ruth regarded him with compassion rather than resentment. And now? What do you believe? The security chief's dark fur rippled with emotion. I believe we have been given a rare gift, the chance to correct an ancient mistake. The distant whisper remained in orbit for 7 days. During that time, the crew established formal diplomatic contact with the Human Leadership Council, shared information about the current state of the galaxy, and learned more about the remarkable society that had developed on this isolated world, which the inhabitants called Nova Pax. Not all crew members embraced the contact. A small faction led by Commander Trell maintained that the purge protocols should be followed, but as more of the crew interacted with the humans of Nova Pax, witnessing their commitment to peace and balance, even the most skeptical began to question the ancient fears. On the final day, an unprecedented event occurred. Trell, who had remained the most skeptical member of the crew, requested permission to meet privately with the Human Council. When she emerged from that meeting, her horn tips gleamed with a new luminosity that those of her species displayed only in moments of profound revelation. "What occurred?" Vorax asked her as they prepared for departure. "I asked for their forgiveness," Trell said simply. "For my role in a genocide I was not alive to witness, but whose legacy I carried without question." And do you know what they said, Captain? They said I had nothing to apologize for, that guilt for the actions of ancestors is a burden no being should carry, that what matters is what we choose now. She extended a faceted appendage, revealing a small wooden token carved with an intricate symbol. "They gave me this as a reminder. It represents their concept of renewal, the understanding that each moment offers a chance to begin again, to make a different choice." When the distant whisper finally departed Nova Pax, it carried no coordinates to relay to former Purge authorities. Instead, it carried a message and a mission. "The humans have achieved what none of our civilizations managed," Oryx told his assembled crew on the observation deck, the blue-green world slowly shrinking behind them. "They recognized their own destructive tendencies and chose to evolve beyond them. They found peace not through dominance or technology, but through harmony with their world and each other." He looked at each crew member in turn, seeing understanding dawn even in Trell's now brightened features. "The Concordium is fractured. The once mighty alliances lie in ruins. The wars we fight now are not about survival, but about power and old grudges that no one truly remembers. Perhaps it is time we learned from those we once feared." "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" asked Perrin, her spotted fur no longer bristling with hostility but smooth with curiosity. "I propose we become messengers," Vorax replied. "Nova Pax will remain hidden in our official records, protected from those who might still wish to complete the purge. But its lessons, its example, that we will share, one system at a time if necessary." "My pack has an ancient saying," Marden offered unexpectedly. "When the path is lost, return to where you began." Perhaps humanity is where we must return to find our way forward. As the distant whisper accelerated away from Nova Pax, Vorax added a personal note to the ship's log. "In our zeal to eliminate what we feared, we nearly destroyed the very thing we needed most, a mirror to our own potential for change." The humans of Nova Pax are not blissfully unaware, as we first thought. They are consciously, deliberately unafraid, and in that courage lies wisdom the rest of us have yet to achieve. He paused, then added, "The great irony of the purge is now clear. We believed we were removing a threat to galactic harmony, but in fact, we were destroying the very species that might have shown us how to achieve it. This lone colony, this final ember of humanity preserved against all odds, may yet kindle the flame that illuminates a better path forward for us all." My ancestors once called humans the storytellers, beings who imagined possibilities beyond what existed. Perhaps that was their greatest gift, and the one we most needed to preserve, the ability to envision a better future and the courage to create it. The ship's engines hummed as they prepared for the jump to hyperspace. Behind them, Nova Pax continued its serene orbit, a world where humans had finally found peace, not by conquering the stars, but by mastering themselves. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the wars that had followed the purge raged on. But aboard the distant whisper, something new had begun. A mission not of fear, but of hope. A journey to share the message of Nova Pax, that extinction need not be the answer to difference, that fear need not determine destiny, that even after millennia of conflict, a new beginning remained possible for all. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.